The First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Although this statement may seem simple, there are several ways to interpret these basic rights as a U.S. citizen. Today in our talk show, we will be focusing on the freedom of speech and how it interacts with business and a growing presence of social media in the online world. Although your right to free speech is one of the fundamental values in America, it is not applicable in all instances. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater is one of the most popular and widely known exceptions about free speech. It's America's go-to way to say that free speech is not absolute and that the First Amendment has its exceptions, although there are variations. Your right to free speech is not ranked above the general safety of the public. Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter have long clung to the claim that they are neutral platforms, and while they block some content, such as child pornography, they have resisted being arbitrators of what is questionable. When you set up a social media account, you agree to guidelines in return to use their site. While most people don't read these guidelines, they lay out what you can and can't do on these companies' sites, and therefore they have power over what you post. While private platforms aren't bound to the restrictions of the First Amendment, generally only the government is, there's a question about how much discretion they should choose to exercise over what speech they allow to flow through them. That question can't be wisely answered without noting how unfortunately central to our lives today social media companies are, like Apple for podcasts, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for videos and links. It's the source of where most Americans get their news today. Conservatives have expressed particular fear about the power of technology companies, arguing that the predominantly liberal workforce in Silicon Valley and other industry centers such as Seattle puts them at a disadvantage in the battle for ideas in a crucial online sphere.
I'm here today to explain our case studies. Our first case study is police versus Apple. Law enforcement wanted the right to obtain the killer's phone, but Apple won't allow it. William Barr, who is the Attorney General, said, quote, "This situation perfectly illustrates why it is critical that the public be able to get access to digital evidence." Since then, Apple has stopped routinely helping the government unlock phones since late 2014. Our second one is about a baker in Lakewood, Colorado. He refused to make a wedding cake to a gay couple because of their religious beliefs. The dispute was to determine whether owners' public accommodations can refuse certain services based on their First Amendment right. The couple eventually filed a complaint to Colorado Civil Rights Commission under the state's public accommodations law, and eventually led to the Supreme Court. And that's the gist of our case studies. Thank you.
Alright, so my section of our talk show is going to be about social media sites deleting content. And one of the big things with this recently has been COVID and the spread of misinformation about COVID-19. And specifically on Facebook, they are not necessarily deleting content that is or deemed to be untrue and misinformation, but they are informing their users that they are interacting with a post or an article that is not necessarily true and is not to be fully trusted. So a message will pop up when they like, share, whatever, that not what they're reading isn't fully true. Another big thing with this has been the censorship of conservative ideas on social media, which this idea has been floated by President Trump, Senator Cruz, many other prominent Republicans and conservative leaders. And this has actually been shown to not be true. And there's many studies that prove this, and I was actually able to find one quickly that showed that right-leaning pages on Facebook have a 51% higher total interaction rate than left-leaning sites. So this is just it's called the illusory truth effect, where these people are repeating a lie so often that people are starting to believe that it's true and buying into this. And Senator Ted Cruz has actually admitted that most of this argument is anecdotal and is not true, and he's just using it to try and fire up his base and the people voting for him. And then another big thing with deleting content is hate speech and illegal hate speech. And tech companies have actually been shown from the EU, did a study that showed that the big tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram have deleted 72% of all illegal hate speech in 2018, which is up from 28% of all total hate speech in 2016. So they're making massive steps. And in 2018, 89% of all content that was flagged as hate speech was removed within 24 hours of it being flagged, and this is up from 40% in 2016. And I know a lot of people talk about freedom of speech and all that, but you don't actually have freedom of speech online. It's a private company. They can do what they want. They're not entitled to follow freedom of speech. You sign terms of agreement when you sign up for these websites that they give you rules, and if you break these rules, your content will be deleted and you can be suspended, or even your accounts can be deleted. And that's just what happens when you deal with private companies. They can do what they want. So that's my section talking about deleted content, and sometimes it's good when companies delete content. If it's hate speech, misinformation, there's obviously some things that get caught that shouldn't be deleted, but you're gonna have to take the good with the bad here and just accept that some things are gonna slip through the cracks, I guess.
President Trump recently complained that search sites such as Google are biased against conservatives and Republicans. On the flip side, conservatives argue that Google and other social media sites are trying to restrict or limit conservative speech and had a huge impact on the 2016 presidential election. Both the liberals and conservatives, however, believe that the government should be able to regulate social media platforms to make sure they are fair and balanced as well as unbiased. Recent social media sites seem to favor one party over the other regarding their political stances. The laws in America say something different. It restricts the government from regulating speech on the internet or social media sites. Social media companies have the ability to censor or limit an individual's right to say or post anything that they feel is considered a hate speech or something that's morally against the company's values. Social media sites can edit or delete anything they want regardless of the person's status on those sites. What does the First Amendment have to say about the freedom of speech? It does offer protection against social media, only to a certain extent. Americans feel this freedom needs to be expanded and people should be allowed to express their own personal views and thoughts without the fear of getting their posts deleted. Congress has offered to step in and defend any social media site from any liability of speech or action lawsuits that they would free them from any liability. The social media sites, however, don't wait around for government intervention. They take it upon themselves to immediately delete any posts or tweets that are insensitive or hateful. How is this possible when the First Amendment is a right? The First Amendment only limits government and federal, state, and local level and not social media sites. Social media sites such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram can censor and limit speech more than the government can. The hopes of expanding First Amendment rights to expand to social networking sites is a goal to allow people more freedom of speech. However, Americans feel people need to be able to express themselves for personal growth and should be able to actively participate and express their own thoughts and beliefs to a certain extent. People today communicate more on Facebook and Twitter and any other social media site than any other online venue, and these sites are more popular than any historic venues such as public parks and streets. Freedom of speech helps people make better decisions, and it personally benefits people when they're able to express their views, and people agree this alienated rights needs to be protected. There are clearly two sides to this issue, allowing people to be able to freely communicate on social media and limiting the press from being able to post whatever platform they feel they adhere to. Only 45% of American people trust news sources as being reliable, fair, unbiased to different political platforms. Government officials are protected against libel and slander and can seek damages against defamatory statements made against them. Finding a balance that is fair encourages freedom of speech but not detrimental to anyone's character is important for the American people to thrive in America today.
Alright guys, so to meet somewhere here in the middle and kind of bring this all together and come up with a productive solution that is positive for both sides, because I think it's important that both sides' opinions and voices get heard. We talk about deleting hate speech and bullying, and it should be removed. Like, hate speech and bullying should not be allowed, but I think that people nowadays are trying to redefine those terms, and we're starting to get caught up in this narrative where if something that we say doesn't necessarily agree with, I'm trying to be unbiased here, but doesn't agree with the left, then I think that it automatically goes to this thing where it should be banned, it should get removed, and that's not right, because there are a lot of people on the right, and there are a lot of Republicans who feel like their voices aren't being heard, and I mean that's clear with the evidence that's been shown, specifically from Twitter and Facebook, that are removing Republican content, and I understand, how Republican policies and whatnot may come off as somewhat heartless, but I don't think it's about that. So I understand where people could get that idea, but I think that when you think about the root of it, I don't think that Republican policies are out there to randomly bash everyone and hate everyone, and we want everyone out of the country except for white people and all that. I don't think that's right, and I don't think that that's fair. And so I think that we need to stop trying to redefine free speech and bullying and hate speech, because that's what we keep trying to do now, and it's not healthy. As a moderate Republican, I should be able to express my viewpoints and not have to worry about someone looking up my address or my job and trying to get me fired. I shouldn't have to do that, but that's where we are right now, and it's very terrifying. But it all starts with the heads of these social media. So, Jack from Twitter, Zuckerberg from Facebook, they have to come together and come up with policies, and it's going to make it so Republican speech particularly doesn't get blocked out. We should all be able to come together from different backgrounds with different viewpoints and bring it all together and have a conversation about it. I think that's the beauty of democracy, but this is why when certain people on the right, and a lot of people on the right, will say, well, this is communism, and then the left will say, oh no, this isn't communism, what are you talking about, you're an idiot. No, it's kind of not, because you're basically saying that this is the right way to do things, and if you don't agree with that, then your voice just shouldn't be heard, which again, we start getting into free speech and all that, and you're basically being denied your free speech, and that's not right. But it needs to come from up top, and then needs to go down, and the government needs to hold these kind of platforms accountable. If you want to come out here and you don't want to have certain content up, then your platform needs to promote that and say, well, okay, well, we don't really like this, so we don't want it up at all. And again, that's all fine and dandy, but then don't claim that you accept all these viewpoints and whatnot, because at the end of the day, you're really not. And that's where people get frustrated. If Twitter came out tomorrow and said, well, we only support Green Party ideas and everything else just wants to go. I mean that's your right. It's your platform. You do what you want, but I feel like you need to come out and say that. And I don't think that there's any type of new law or regulation that needs to be made up. I just think platforms need to be more honest. And so, I guess fining the companies is something that you could do, but again, I just think that it all comes back to we need to stop redefining everything and stop redefining freedom of speech, hate speech, particularly because everything now is, and I'm not trying to get too one-sided here. I'm just going based off what I see. I'm a very raw individual, and I just say things based on how I see them. But everything is racist now. Everything's homophobic, and I just don't think that's necessarily true. And I don't think that we're allowing all viewpoints to come together and allowing each other to be heard. And so, to summarize this all up, I think that hate speech and obvious bullying should be removed. Obvious racist comments, obvious attacks against people of the LGBTQ community or anyone like that. I mean, again, it's not right, because we all have to realize that at the end of the day, we're all human, right? We all bleed the same blood and all that. So, so obvious things like that, I mean, it should be removed automatically, but I just don't think that right now everyone is completely on board with, okay, this is hate speech, this is bullying and all that. And I think that we just have to come together, and we have to have those hard conversations about what is and what isn't, because I think that people are getting hurt too easily. And I think it's because the media likes to feed you all this stuff, but you would never see anything from the other side because it gets removed. If people from the Democratic Party, for example, want to pay to have their advertisements up on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, that's totally fine. Again, that's up to you, but I don't think the content should be necessarily removed unless it's legit hate speech or bullying. So that's just kind of where I stand on that whole thing.